So it's saying that we are live now. If you can see me and you can hear me, just drop me a comment telling me know that we're in this together. It's been so long since I've been on a live chat. The last couple of months have been haywire, absolutely hectic. About a month or so back, maybe longer, 2 months ago, I travelled from the west coast in America right over to the east coast via RV. I know that Pigcake's been bitching about it on his YouTube for I don't know how long now, and I haven't really said much about it. But I did say that I was going to update everybody with what's been going on. For the last 6 months, maybe more, I've been working on a few little bits which we'll get into later on. Hey, Reese Moreau, there we are. We're in. You can hear me, you can see me. That's amazing. So just drop me some comments. Let's talk first. I'm going to update you on where I've been. I'm really sorry for not getting back to people on emails. I'm really sorry for not getting back to people on messages. I could tell you that it's absolutely been the craziest 2 months of my life. I flew Pigcake in from Miami, and we've been working from like 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the morning or the next morning, then getting a couple of hours sleep and then getting up. So it's absolutely been ridiculous. And I think that everybody thinks that I've just been ignoring them, and everybody thinks that I've just, been avoiding messaging them. That's not the case. And things have been running a little bit slow when it comes to sleight of mind. I've not been updating stuff as much as I should, and also I've been posting out every 2 weeks instead of every 1 week, but that's because I haven't been leaving the house. I've literally been a hermit. So Ben, it's really nice to hear from you, and Felicity. I've not heard from you guys for such a long time, but yeah, let's chat. Let's talk about what's been going on. So this live stream, I'm hoping it doesn't tread on anybody's toes. Anybody that's looked at the Kickstarter link will see that's the pre-launch to my very own psychic survival kit. So the wine that you can hear. Do you want to turn your fan off, Pigcake? So Pigcake sat in the background with a fan on because it's so warm in here. The link that I've pinned at the top of the chat and also in the description is a link to a pre-launch on a Kickstarter page. And a few months back, I did say that I don't want to tread on anybody's toes with this stuff, but I worked with Illusionist for the longest time, and I've designed a series of boxes that I'm sure that people are looking at this have probably seen. And there were a few things that I felt back then were not the way that I'd have done things, and I'm trying to be careful the way that I sort of meander around things because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to annoy anybody, but I always said that if I had the opportunity to do myself something that was similar to one of these boxes, how would I do it? And so I set off on a mission to travel around to the psychic hotspots in America, and I broke into secret societies. I went and looked at what crystal gazers and these, pendulum readers and tarot readers were doing, and I set off on a journey to document and try to fool them into believing that I were the real deal, and then come back and learn more about an industry that I thought I knew a lot about already. Now, bear in mind, I've been in mentalism for a long time. I thought I knew so much about this psychic stuff and the psychic realms, and what I actually learned on that trip, I documented and I brought it back, and I've designed a series of props that will allow you to do psychic seeming routines or appear to be the real deal without actually having to do any work. And some of the things in there are unbelievable. The Astro card, I went out and we got real world performances for all this stuff, and I went out and I was blown away by how something just this big is such a unique and interesting prop. Do you know what I mean? And so yeah, let's have a look at the comments and then we'll get back to that later on. So Sebastian, how's it going, dude? You have to come back over. So I think in the midst of all this, if you can hear a noise in the background as well, that's literally just a fan going off. It's so warm up here. That's Pigcake messing about with a fan in the background. I can't remember where we were at Cheltenham that we met you and Seb. We went down to Cheltenham. We did a day's filming or 2 days filming down in Cheltenham. That was a great experience. And on this trip, I actually shot in California. I went over to Joshua Tree. I shot in Joshua Tree. I went over to Sedona. I shot in Sedona. Then we crossed through the deserts in Arizona to go all the way down to New Orleans. I think in between the liners there, went over to Memphis and then traveled up to Nashville, and from Nashville, I'm missing out the entirety of Texas there. We went to El Paso and everywhere in between, and then made our way over to St. Augustine, and we met a few people along the way. It was a really, really interesting trip. There you go, Moreau. You know what? When I got over to Orlando, I was so gutted that we didn't get the chance to catch up. But I am coming back, so I'm flying into Magic Live. I believe I'm going to fly into Vegas, and then from there I'm going to travel across to Miami. I think I'm going to stay with Pigcake for a week, and then I've got some things that I need to take care of in California So it'll either be Vegas, California, and then Miami, which logistically seems to make more sense, or it'll be Vegas, Miami, and then California. But we'll work that out. Luke, I sent you a message. I don't know if you got my message. I'm back now. I know I've been so busy. I know that you probably think that I'm not at time, but I'm free now. So let's do something. Let's catch up. But Jonathan Grice, I haven't seen you for years. How's it going? Where are you living now? Like, where are you living now? Let's catch up. Benedict Pop, I'm great, thank you. How are you? Tell you your future. You're going to have good luck, and you're definitely not going to respond to the message that I just asked you to catch up. Let's see what's going on. Sound is cutting out, so is it just Reese's sound that's cutting out? I don't know. Joshua, did you get the split booklet? I know that went across there. Why didn't you go to FISM? So I was going to go across. So I've just Big Kick's just sound cutting out
a little bit.
A little bit. Maybe it's clipping. We'll turn it down just a little bit. It sounds like a signal issue. Well, if it keeps chopping and keeps cutting out, we'll go back. So I was going to go to FISM. Originally, what the plan was is I would over here doing some work with Dynamo. And Dynamo is I believe he's one of the judges, or maybe the online judge for FISM. And he said, do you want to come to FISM? And we were going to go. And we just literally have been so stacked doing this project that we haven't had a chance. We haven't had time to do it.
Audio's cutting off. Yeah, so it's...
Well, somebody else said it seems fine to me. So maybe it's just... Okay, well, we'll just keep talking.
FISM, yeah, so FISM was the last thing, and then it keeps going.
It's absolutely fine. We'll be all right. We'll give it a minute to come back in. How much will the kit cost? Sounds very interesting. So let me talk about what's inside the kit, and I'm hoping that it's not cutting out when I talk about this. And if it is, I'll just turn the sound down a little bit on this just to make sure it's not clipping and cutting out. So inside the kit, what I decided on were a series of props that I thought were like really, for me, really interesting props, really interesting things to go in the box. And one thing that I've always had a problem with is bringing out blank billets in the heat of a performance. And that were really where the Psychic Survival Kit gained its wings, its conception. And so Robert Pound, who's an incredible magician, designed me like a notepad style holder that fits into fits a bunch of billets inside it. And I was carrying around this notepad holder, and when I was pulling these out, they didn't look like weird props. It just looked like a little sketch pad. So that was the conception. I took it to Robert Pound. I said, can you build me this? And then I went on from there and decided to put a series of routines together using the notepad, made it into like a switch device and a few other things. And then it started like that. And then I went, okay, like somebody will literally, it went from asking me like weird questions like, oh, how long have you been able to read body language? How long have you been doing this to, you know, you're definitely a psychic. You're definitely doing this. And I thought, you know what? That's interesting. How many other psychic props do I use? And years ago, I was given a pendulum. And I thought, well, a pendulum's a really interesting thing. And then I came up with a routine where somebody rings one of their friends over FaceTime, and they imagine making the pendulum move, and the pendulum starts to spin. And then they think of any object in their house, in any room. And using the pendulum, you're able to deduce the exact object in somebody's room, in their house. And then I started reading the forums for psychic stuff and thinking, do you know what do people want? And I came up with this really interesting Astro card Q&A system. So I merged basically astrological mentalism with Q&A. And that was a really interesting idea, because what it allowed me to do in less than 20 seconds, know somebody's star sign without having to fish for letters, without having to have them write it down. And they could literally think of any question, and you'd know the exact question and star sign, and you were looking away the entire time. So when you turn back round, you'd say, this is the question that I think you want in your life. You'd answer it, and then you'd reveal the star sign, and that'd be it. It'd be as quick as that. And then also I put inside there we've designed 22 major arcana tarot cards. And the beauty of the tarot cards, for me, is that they have a distinct marking system on the back that's speed reader. So you don't have to mess around trying to guess what tarot card somebody wants. And in the corner, and I think this is the coup de grace, this is the nicest bit. You all right?
I was going to tell you, if they're having an issue, just refresh the screen.
Yeah, if you're having an issue, just refresh your screen. So in the corners, baked into the design, there's a QR code. And this little thing I thought really interesting. It was an idea I had a long time ago. And what happens is, let's say, for example, that you get lost in the middle of a reading and you don't know how to read somebody. what you do is you say, oh, you know, I take a picture of everybody that I'm reading. So would you mind, I don't want to see the face of the card, but can you just hold it up like this and let me take a photograph? So then when you bring your mobile phone up, what happens is the camera brings that little yellow box up and it tells you what tarot card they're holding in their hand. And if you click on that, it then takes you to a page that will give you the bullet points for the reading to be able to successfully get from the start to the finish of the reading. Now, you might be thinking, well, what happens if they pull their phone out? Well, that doesn't matter because I got you covered on that. They pull their phone out when they scan the QR code, or if they notice the QR codes, they choose one of the cards at random, they scan it. It takes them to a page where they can purchase an ungimmicked tarot deck and other pendulums and ungimmicked items. So you can never see you can never see the gimmick. It's hidden in plain sight. But the beauty also of the tarot cards is that there's a specific system that's built into the faces. I've talked about the stack system using, you know, the numbers that are on the faces and what you can do with that. Gordon, so the power of silence is actually in this set, and I talk about it in depth. So if you've been on YouTube and you've seen the routine where I sit across from somebody and we stare in silence, what you allow this person to do is shed some of the things that they're thinking of, and they just start to cry, right? They just literally start to cry. And the trailer, I mean, I don't think I can launch the trailer. Would you be able to get me the tarot deck? That'd be a possibility. But yeah, so there's that, and then there's also a bag, and there's like a brilliant change bag that's inside there. And I say it's brilliant for a few reasons, but it allows for Kurasuki style routines. It allows you to do Visa Cabaret. The way that I intend to see it designed, and I don't know if this is going to come to fruition, but it really doesn't matter. I'm trying to get it done right now, but that's what the Kickstarter is going to help in, to find the right people to be able to develop this. The drawstring actually is shaped in a figure of 8. So if you pull the right hand drawstring, what happens is that one side of the pocket opens, but if you pull the left hand drawstring, because it's in a figure of 8, it opens the other side. So just by getting them to pull one side off, can you just open that for me? They do the switch for you without knowing it, which allows you then to do serial divinations. It allows you to do these crystal Kurasuki style routines. There's a series of crystals that are inside there, and I've done a series of routines with that. So you can tell based on the energy of the crystals exactly what somebody's holding. And best of all, what I like about this kit is all those weird procedures that come with routines like 21, and there's very, very little crossover. There's very little crossover in this, but I'd be remiss if I didn't put in there some of the things that I'd done in the past. There's a version of 21 where obviously my version of 21 you need two stacks or 2 packets of cards. Well, that lends itself perfect because they deal 11 to the left and 11 to the right. The packet on the left represents their past, and the packet on the right represents their present. And then what happens there is this really beautiful thing where you can tell them what tarot card they're thinking of, and you don't need to touch anything. You can give readings. Yeah, and there's multiple outs in the bags. Honestly, I've thought of absolutely everything in this. I've gone through this and gone through everything. What do you think? Ending for a show similar to Now You See Me movie, everyone gets an envelope and pre-show of e-devices for everybody. If I were going to do the ending to something like that, I'd probably use 2 out envelopes. Mark Lemon and I discussed this for an America's Got Talent audition. So there's some real good stuff in that. So you get your billets, you get your billet routines, you get peaks that I've not taught anywhere. Hey up, David, how's it going? So this is I don't know if you'll be able to see this on camera. I'm hoping you can. This is the tarot design. And these are beautiful. When I say these are beautifully designed, these are hand designed. So I don't know if you can see this. This is the Lovers card. But instead of the traditional lovers, there's 2 skeletons on here, which represents eternity. I don't think you can see that because there's a light behind me. Can you look at that from the camera? I don't know if you can see that. Oh, the camera's killing me. I might come over the top of this. Is this killing it? Let's have a look at this. But they're beautifully designed. These have already been done. We've had all the prototypes made. I hand cut a lot of the prototypes. This we had printed, but the designs on these are just really stunning. There we go. You can see them there. But yeah, if on the Kickstarter page in a week's time, what you're going to see in a week's time is that you'll see the design of the props. You'll see the reactions to the people. I mean, this stuff, literally, the end of the trailer, I say to people after showing them this stuff, I say, and we didn't try to convince them we were psychic. At the end of the trailer, I say, what happens if I told you that all of this was a trick. And nobody would accept they were a trick. They were saying it's not a trick. 1,000,000% it's not a trick. And we literally had to spend time after the performances literally convincing people that we weren't psychic. And that's what I thought were interesting. And also the quickest test that we came up with to decide if somebody were actually a psychic is when we perform this stuff on psychics in New Orleans and Sedona and places like that, is if they told me that I were definitely a psychic, I knew they definitely were a psychic, which I thought were the best test, right? And you get to see this beautiful little documentary that we've cut. But there's a lot in there. There's the tarot cards, there's the notepad that holds your billets, so you never have to feel weird about handing out blank bits of cards. There's beautiful switch ideas in there. There's the 2-out bag, there's the pendulum, the crystals. Like I say, there's the designs baked into the back of these. All this information will be on the Kickstarter page. But and this is the coup de grace. This is the coup de grace. I forgot this bit. This is the bit that makes me so. Can I swear on this?
Right.
It makes me so fucking excited. This is the bit that makes me so excited. Every single box that every company's ever produced sits on a shelf, and it does nothing. That's it. It just does nothing. This box not only holds your props, but we've designed a Q&A switch box into the actual box. We've put the design on the bottom of the box so that when it sits on a table, you can use it as a switch box, a Q&A box. If you wanted to use it as an actual box like the ones like the other boxes that other companies have released, you literally just put it onto your shelf with the bottom facing up. So you can have it as an actual ornament or a trophy or a collectible. But if you wanted to use it practically, you could place it on the table and it literally will switch in and out people's billets so that you don't have to. And that's built into the actual box itself. So, you know, you can carry all your stuff around in the velvet bag. You can bring it out. The velvet bag can be used as a mat for your tarot if you want. You could do the witch hand stuff. You could do the energy readings with the crystals. There's storytelling. There's the silent routines with the crying. There's the baked in QR codes, the marked tarot systems. There's the spectator through FaceTime moves a pendulum and you can deduce things in their house. There's so much stuff on there. Like, you remember the push that I did on one of the other boxes that I'm not going to talk about, but the push that I did on that, you literally take a pendulum and it starts to swing, and the person that stood across the room starts to swing in time with the pendulum, and the moment that you drop the pendulum, the person drops into the arms of the person at the back. So the notepad and the billet holder, so Joshua, what we're looking at with a notepad holder is we're looking to build things in there to get the most out of it. But the way that we're aiming to do that is on the tier system. I don't know what you call them. What do you call them? Tier systems?
Stretch goals.
Stretch goals. Because depending on how it goes, you know, like depending on how it goes, depends on how much we can put into the box. So the more of a community we are, the bigger the build can be. And my aim, what I really want to do, is I want to fly out to the place that's making this stuff so that I can look at it in person. Because another thing that really annoyed me when I worked with other companies, and I'm not naming any companies, but when I've worked with other companies, they just give the props out, and then you often look at them and you go, you know what, I'm not happy with this. I want to be 1000% happy with this because it's been done my way. There's no other company that's intervening. There's no other company that's getting involved in this. It's just going to be done for me, my way. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that anymore. Let's talk about some other stuff. Let's look at the comments. Let's see who's in. So Rita, it'd be really great to talk to you, and I will catch up with you soon. Today's just been one of those busy days. James, how's it going? Let's catch up. I want to come into Italy and I want to finish my second poster, so let's do it. So there's Mentalist Chingses. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Chingses. It's lovely to see you. Keep up to date with what's going on. I'm glad to be back on YouTube. Gabriel, there is a second channel that's up. But if you don't mind, how do you manage your work and mental health at the same time? Any advice? So, really weirdly, and this is going to sound like a really ridiculous comment, I work until I burn out, and when I burn out, I just go off grid. So you'll see every few months I'll post a comment that says I'm going to have a bit of space for myself. I've just learned to almost hacksaw into my professional life, or axe into my professional life, and just decide that I'm turning the switch off. And when I turn that switch off, I just turn it off. And I've learned now, and this is going to sound ridiculous over the years, to forgive. And what I mean by that is that there's nothing that really there's nothing that really hurts me exponentially, because I just go, okay, what's the reason for this? This is the allotted time that I'm going to give myself to grief on this. I'm going to take whatever grief I've got, and I'm going to use that as ammunition to push forwards. So, you know, it's not, I don't really suffer from depression or mental health problems, but what I tend to do is I'll burn out, I go into a hole, and then I just come out of that hole and I just go, right, that's the period that I needed to get rid of that, and then I shed it and move on. And that's really it. I hope that helps. Hello. I would love to come to Poland. Let's work something out. Charlie, how's it going, bro? Like, let's catch up soon. I'll be back down in London very soon. I'm sure we'll be doing some great things together. Let's see if there's anything else that I've missed. Reese, be at my house for 12:30 tomorrow, and don't be late. Reese is learning to make the perfect cup of tea. He's getting there, aren't you, Reese? I've missed it over the last few days. It's roasting in here, isn't it? It's so warm in this room. I'm burning up. So, Krios, I'll be in LA very soon, so hit me up and let's go out. Let's do something. Moreau, it'd be rude of us not to catch up when we get to Miami, to Orlando. Mark Austin, lovely to see you. Let's see if there's any. Does anybody else have any questions? Nick, really lovely to see you. Coffee Boy, sound seems fine, so it must just be you. Must just be you, Piquet.
Me?
It is. I'm currently at work, so I'll have to be in and out of this. Love the survival kit, looks cool. Thank you. And do you know what? Honestly, I promise you one thing. I'm going to say this, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about the kit, but have you seen me this excited about something in such a long time? Whenever I've worked, like I say, with these companies in the past, whenever I've worked with these companies, every single one of them got involved in the creative process in some way or another. This is the first time that I've ever had full creative freedom to do things my way. And again, Pigcake will tell you, we went from having 20 arguments on the first thing we worked on to 10 on the thing before. This time, we're in such a good groove, like we're in such a good rhythm, that things are literally beautiful. They're running so well. Do you know what I mean? I'm so happy that we're managing to do this. Let's have a look. Is that hidden in the design? It's in the corners, so you can't notice it at first glance. So it's baked into the design. But it doesn't matter if they do notice it, because we thought of that eventually as well. Mool, lovely to see you. Mool's got some really great stuff. If you don't know Mool's material, so's Colin, both of you, everybody in the chats have got some really great stuff. Reader, there is stuff on palmistry inside there. There's a really interesting section on palmistry. Palmistry? That sounds better than palmistry. Palmistry, where you can, if you know my a gift from me to you from my very first book, which Mark Lemon still says today that routine's his favourite routine of mine. There's a beautiful update where you get one spectator to read another spectator's palm, and they can literally reveal any information the spectator's thinking of. So the spectator becomes the psychic. It's a really beautiful little routine. Hey up, Jason. It's lovely to see you. Here we are. Let's have a look. We're still going down. So, Loic from Switzerland. It's all right. There's a date for the launch of the Kickstarter. That's probably a good thing. When's the launch of the Kickstarter?
Time you're gonna do a live stream?
It's going to be 1 week's time, and we are going to do it live. I think it's going to be the first live launch that I've ever done. I've never done a live launch before. I'm going to be doing this live launch, so I'll be updating people. It's probably going to get annoying over the next week, but I want to make sure everybody can see it and we're all part of it together. Let's all decide on a time. I'll open up a thread on my wall and we can decide on a time that's the best, and let's launch it together and see how it goes. Gotham Seth, any tips on how to write a good, unique, story-driven corporate stage act? So the problem with a story-driven corporate stage act is that it depends on whether you're trying to spread the message of the company, which is what a lot of corporate companies want, or you're spreading your own message and story. So that's the first thing that you've got to decide. What is it the company wants from you? If you have artistic license to do whatever you want, what I personally try to do, and I flew to Germany to work for a corporate company. I met a Yugo Boss event. We were a cryptocurrency investors corporation thing at Medusa in London, and I went down there and they invited me to come and do something over there, and they wanted the entire thing tailored around being able to influence corporate clients. Now you've got to be really careful the line that you walk, because what you don't want to do is suggest that you could teach salespeople how to make more money, because it's going to go one of two ways. It's a 50-50. But I think anything that's influence driven, anything that shows that, you know, the weakness of the human mind when it comes to being led and directed in certain ways, and those stories, just look at stories, find things that are factual that they can grab hold of and check out themselves. Because usually these corporate acts, whenever you say anything, they want to do a deep dive and find out more for themselves. So what I'd attempt to do is I'd attempt to think about a way to encapsulate your story and merge it. And I'm just, again, sort of making this up to answer your question, but I think it aptly answers it now. Is take a percentage of what it is you want to express. Take a percentage of what it is that you know these companies as a whole want to express, and merge the two, and then find the line that blurs it and tell the story from that perspective. And maybe tell your story from the beginning, and then by the end, when you get to that end point, I'm going to take this jacket off because it's roasting. When you get to that end point, what you'll realize is that you have an interesting set of stories that fit what you want artistically and fit what they want professionally. And then you end up with a really beautiful, almost line that runs through it. But yeah, it's something that I'd be happy to talk about on a full-length video and go into my writing process and how I write. The minute I'm working on a couple of corporate acts for clients, but theirs is very different because the corporate acts are booking them for who they are, as opposed to trying to spread the message of the company. Any thought of doing a show without a theme, just have fun and laugh with psychological Darren Brown approach? Do you know what? Close-up shows are that for me. If I'm ever doing it, and again, just to be very transparent and very clear, I spend a lot of my time consulting now. I spend a lot of my time writing for other people. The only time I really ever go do these corporate events, or the only time I ever do these live events, close-up's not too bad, I'll do that because I do love close-up, is when the pay's right. And I'm not, you know, I'm not above saying that if the pay's right, I'll take time to travel somewhere, get paid to be put up in an hotel, get paid a bit of money to come back. Do you know what I mean? When you're earning enough money to do 20 minutes to an hour or to an hour and a half, you'd be mad not to do it. But yeah, I do perform for fun. That's my favourite way to perform. And usually it's the person that stood in front of me that dictates where the performance is going to go, you know? So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. It seems that the live chat is frozen, so maybe the actual stream's down, I don't know. But does anybody else have any questions? Does anybody else want to know anything else? I'm here for about another 15 minutes. So you can ask me whatever you want, I'll give you an answer. And if there's something that comes up that's a big subject, just like what Gotham just asked then we'll do a full video of it going down the line in the future. And if you're wondering what I'm drinking, it's Old Jamaican ginger beer. It's the best brand out there. Light. I'm not a shill for the company, but I would be. So if you're watching this and want to send me free ginger beer at 1 calorie a can, I'm happy. Big Kate's laughing in the background. Okay, so we've had another couple of comments coming in. Okay, so again, something about the notepad holder. So the notepad holder in this kit is going to be one of those things that's malleable depending on how the funding goes, because I really don't know how it's going to go. I'm hoping that it goes well, because like I say, it's the first time that I've ever really designed out like this myself. And what does this say? I've seen videos on TikTok and Facebook of people revealing one step ahead. A bit scared of doing a Q&A. Hungvu, you don't need to use a one ahead to do a Q&A. That's the brilliance of a good Q&A system. And we do a deep dive into Q&A on this set. The one ahead is one of the traditional methods, and if done right, you know, if done right, it could be brilliant. But there's got to be ways to hide that, and there's got to be ways to stitch it so that it can't be seen and it can't be revealed. Thoughts on Enrique Enriquez? Amazing. Some really, really great stuff. If you go back to Enrique Enriquez's reading systems, if you pick up any of Kenton Nepper's stuff, him and Kenton had some closely guarded stuff. One of my favourite books of all time were Great Minds Think Alike. He dropped a bomb in there. Amazing, you know. I love your STEM system, my favourite project. Wouldn't people who watch it online expect you doing without fumbling for paper? I think that when it comes to psychics, and another thing that I found is that any prop that seems like a weird prop doesn't seem so weird. You know, it doesn't seem so weird when it's done in the capacity of pretending to be the real deal, which I found were really odd. Like, you look at tarot readers, they're spreading cards out on the table in the most, and they call them spreads, in the weirdest spreads. And then when you do that as a magician, it's like, okay, take this, deal 4 cards there, do this, deal 5 cards here, cut this. it seems really weird in the context of playing cards, because they don't know a card game where that framework exists. So you sort of got to accept that they know that that's part of the procedure to get to where you're going. Whereas in tarot, they see all these really weird, these really weird spreads, and all of a sudden it opens up the doors to a lot of material that you might have dismissed and left behind. So Eman, really lovely to see you. So grateful for your giving style, Pete. You have influenced my career more than anyone. Thank you for that. And if it wasn't, again, for people like you, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. I never in a million years believed that I'd be able to get an RV and rent an RV and travel from one side of the coast in America, the west coast, to the east coast. Didn't think it was possible. And I sat there and I reflected upon it when I made this documentary, and I sat back and thought, God, we've done a lot. We have done a lot. You know what I mean? And it's unbelievable to be where we are now. Rita, thoughts on Kenton's Wonder Words? Would you recommend it? So I'd recommend absolutely everything. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's Kenton's Wonder Words. It doesn't matter if it's Doc Hilfer's, the Dance to Shiva, or any of that stuff, or anybody's Penguin Lecture. Read and look at as much as you can. And what I'd say is, it doesn't really matter if you're planning on using everything from it. So what people tend to do is they'll look at something and they'll go, that's crap, I'm never going to use it. And one of the best pieces of advice that I can give you, and I had this debate with somebody, in a bar about music. I had this debate with somebody, and they were saying, oh, I'll never listen to Taylor Swift. I'll never listen to this person. I'll never listen to that person. And what my rule always is with everything is, I've learned more from the things where, at the times when I make mistakes, and from the people I didn't think that I'd follow, and the people I didn't think I'd watch, than the people that I do, because I already know what I like. So what I try to do is take something from absolutely everything. What's the bit of gold that I find in everything? Taylor Swift, it might be the way that something's panned from one speaker to another. And how can I use that? When we temporarily lose sound from one side of the speaker system for a second, is there something that I can take away from that? Do I like the way that this record was produced? What is it about the guitar in that track that I really liked? Is there a particular sound on the record? And it's very rare now that I find that there's nothing that I draw inspiration from. So I'd absolutely recommend Wonder Words. I personally don't go down the NLP route. I personally don't dive too much into the route of I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z. But there was so much I took from Wonder Words. And Wonder Words, I'd arguably say, is the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing right now. So Dan Forrest, lost the use of my fingers after suffering a spinal cord injury. So my magic days are long gone. Been dabbling with mentalism for a couple of years now, excuse me. Any advice on principles you think I may get the most out of with my limited digital dexterity? So the honest answer to that question is this, is whenever you're using a prop like a deck of cards, there's a million things you can do if you decide to learn to treat the deck of cards like a grenade. Get it out of your hands. And I know that physically you need to, but what I do is I'd be looking up card routines and I'd be going, okay, which one of these don't require me touching the deck, which are the least procedure heavy, and it doesn't seem like a monotonous process. Okay, so if I know that I can arrive at this point, how can I dress this as a piece of mentalism? And like with things like Tequila Hustler, really brilliant little routine. You don't need to hold anything for that. You can ask somebody to take a coin out, put it onto the table, and then pull it out. Do you know what I mean? And then start to perform. So what I'd say is look for things that are psychomechanical, that are not too heavy on process. That are not really too heavy on process, and where the process logically makes sense. And what you have to do is, when you realize you're not using your hands, or you realize there's a restriction of any kind, is make up for that with a storytelling, and less is more. And try to make the routines that you're doing have almost a metaphorical edge, or a metaphorical, almost a cap on the top of a point you're trying to make. So it's the cherry on the cake instead of the cake. Hopefully that really makes sense, because let's say somebody sits down and says to me, oh, have you ever seen those psychics that can do X, Y, and Z? And if you sat back and said, I think it's really interesting, is I think that all of us to some degree have that ability inside us, but I think we take it for granted. And I think it comes down to a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Some of us believe that we can't because we have that fixed mindset, where some of us experiment with weird stuff. In fact, I was just reading this article the other day. Instead of telling you, let me show you. Could you just take a coin out for me? and then you take a coin out and they mix it up, and you say, statistically, most people have put it in this hand, and then they open the hand, and then you say, but where it gets weird is when you repeat this, because it defies the odds. So it makes us question the world around us. You know, is mathematics something that we should be looking at and wondering whether the flip of a coin really is a 50-50? Do you know what I mean? So all of a sudden you're making what you're doing a metaphor that proves a point, that makes us think about the world in a bigger way, and you need to do less then instead of doing more. Let's have a little look at this. Love the Q&A you did with Louis Laval on Odyssey, the one where you all wrote the best advice you'd ever given and switched advice to the answer. No one ahead. So in this, I've talked about this, Joshua, in this set, but I expanded upon that. So if you thought there were a lot of information on Q&A in Odyssey, I literally break this down in a really detailed way on how to mix this in conjunction with routines like Sneak Thief. You know, we look at Sneak Thief in this set, but ways to do it that no one's ever thought about. And then we do it with items and objects, and we go sort of guerrilla style, old Jerome Finley style routines, but with a more, I'd say, screwed on approach to Q&A, as opposed to it being, I'm going to take this esoteric philosophical approach where I'm just going to say these whimsical things and hope that the Barnum statement's enough to drive me through the performance. We look at bona fide ways to get confirmation on hits. And if you saw the reactions in the trailer, that's just to me sitting silently or me whispering something. And I take the Bob principle and I just shoot it astronomically. Like, I take it to places it's never been. And it's opened up so many different routes and avenues and allowed me to share material that there's no crossover or very little crossover from things we've discussed before. And, you know, the PK stuff on there, there's a couple of PK bits that are really, really, like, for me, mind-blowing, you know. Spencer Elvis, hey Pete, I just got here, an esoteric mentalist and tarot reader. I'm intrigued about this kit. What should I know before considering purchasing it? I love your work with Louis Laval on Odyssey. There's so much. If you watch this live back, you'll see so much. When the Kickstarter goes live, you'll be able to see exactly what's on there. But the beauty of this is, you know, the tarot cards, look at them. I mean, the poker sized. Like, it's not cumbersome. You're not carrying around this large tarot kit and trying to convince somebody that, you know, these are beautiful. They fit in your hand. They operate the same as cards if you wanted to. I'm not saying to do that. There's so many routines and ideas built into just these alone. And Reese came. So Reese Goodley is actually a professional tarot reader. And Reese came and sat in on the back of the explanations. And I had Reese in just in case I missed anything. And when we finished that, he left. And you can ask him, he's in this chat. He turned around and said, that's just blown away everything that I've ever known about tarot. And I was like, wow, that's such a compliment from somebody like Reese, who's doing this professionally and actually making a living as a professional tarot reader, on how I'm incorporating my approach to the way I think about things into that without it seeming like a trick. But if you want to reveal it is a trick or treat it like a piece of mentalism, you can. It shows you how to weave stories into what you're doing. It shows you how to just take a back seat and let the performance drive itself. And at the end of it, like I say, the only thing that you'll have to do is convince them that you're not psychic, which I think is a really interesting concept in itself, right? Can I share a routine for a think of any place, country or word? Do you mean, can I share the method for one, or can I share a resource to be able to go and get one? I've got to a point where I'm able to deliver readings pretty much using anything. That's something else I talk about. I mostly get them to name a random word and use it as an oracle. Enrique and Jamie have had major influence on me. They're both incredible. Do you know what I mean? They're both incredible people, both, you know, have incredible ideas. And that's the thing. Listen to what it is you just said there. You said that you've learned to be able to do it with just a word. And that's something that I've demonstrated a number of times. The problem is how do you learn to do that? How do you build those neurological pathways? And again, that's something else that I discuss. And I talk about how I'm able to construct these readings using nothing. And sometimes, you know, the most beautiful thing on the planet is just to be able to sit down with somebody and accurately tell them about their life with absolutely nothing, without the need for a billet peak, without the need for any, you know, chicanery, just to literally look at somebody and share a moment. And the one thing that's different again about this set, this performance is where I just sit in silence for a minute with people, and they've literally said after sitting in silence with them that they said everything they've never been able to say. And I share that. I talk about that. So hi Pete, I'm performing a routine that absolutely blew me away at Blackpool for the first time at stage show on Sunday. The one where they have a judge on stage after 2 words are thought of. So that's Book of the Fallen. What a nice little piece and what a nice little message. So James, I'm glad that you're caning it with that. I'm looking forward. I hope you're coming out to Vegas. I'm hoping that we get to catch up. So if you're going to Magic Live, let me know. Let's grab a beer. Rowan, honestly, like I said a few times on here, I'm so excited for this. I've kept it, I've kept it under wraps just for fear of any sort of sabotage before I got to the point that I were able to put up the Kickstarter. And there's Reese, Romany Pirates is Reese's, but it was incredible, never seen anything like it. So also realise that this is about the new project, so feel free to ignore that. No, not at all. Quick thing from me, I know you have nothing to do with the shipping on the first great order, so see if there's an update. Can you email me? I don't know, if you email me directly after this, Pigcake's going back to Miami, so what we're going to do is go have our last celebratory meal and a beer. I'm celebrating him going. But I'm gonna do that, and I've got all the time in the world to be able to look into stuff like that. Spencer Elvis, thoughts on Richard Knight. My thoughts on Richard Knight are the exact same as if you ask me about anybody. I think that every single person that's ever released anything has shared things that are, really beautiful. I think that for me, I take something away from everybody. One thing that I will say is I think that there's a deeper level to Richard's thinking that a lot of people tend to miss, and hopefully you'll understand what I mean by that. Not magic related, but I feel like your projects have been talking an increasingly filmic quality. Are you a movie buff? Letterboxd top 4. So Matt, I am. I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to shoot. I do like to letterbox everything, but I also maybe you'll understand this. I also letterbox everything because I shoot a lot more stationary now, and one of the biggest things I learned in film is that for years I felt guilty about using a tripod, and then I realized that most Hollywood blockbusters are always using a tripod. And the beauty of letterboxing something like that is it gives me the ability to move the footage behind the letterbox and put in post some fake movement. But I am a movie buff, and if you ever want to have a chat about movie stuff, let me know, because I love making films. I'm not good with dealing and managing audience emotions. Will there be anything on that? Can you tell me what you mean by dealing with audience emotions? Do you mean when they're crying? How do you deal with somebody crying? Do you know, it's one of those things where we never know how somebody's going to react. And there's simple routines that you could perform as a non-esoteric or esoteric performer, where you ask them to write something down, and you can be very specific in Q&A and say, please don't write anything about a loved one that's passed. Please don't ask me anything that's health related. Please don't ask me anything that's going to make you feel uncomfortable. And they still do that, right? Even in Mentalism performances. So they still now do things like that. And the problem when it comes to stuff like that is that you've just got to take whatever the reaction is, and you've got to roll with it. You've got to be understanding, you've got to be patient, and I'm sort of checking the questions at the same time as this. But you've got to be patient, you've got to be understanding, and you've just got to take your time and let them experience that. And the moment when somebody's experiencing something like that, if it's you and them, it's not, in my belief, not really your job to try to comfort them. If there's a friend there, a friend will often do that. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't comfort somebody, but more often than not, sit for a second and just let that moment breathe. Give them a moment to compose themselves and thank them for sharing. And I'll guarantee to you the response that you get back from that is probably going to be more wonderful than any response that you've ever had. And there's one thing that I want you to look at. Even if you take nothing away from this, even if you take nothing away from listening to what it is that I'm saying, go into my YouTube and watch the moment where I sit in silence with them. I do share the technique of that on the set. Look at the trailer for the Psychic Survival Kit. And the first thing that every person says after I perform for them is, I appreciate you. And things like, thank you for touching people the way that you do. And I say, thank you for sharing. They say, no, thank you. And they're thanking me for just being me. And it transcended into something that wasn't just a performance. It felt like they actually cared about me being in their space for that couple of minutes. And that couple of minutes, even though that I were coming along and I was just sitting with them and doing what I normally did, it took on a whole new meaning. It took on a whole new series of feelings. So just let them breathe, let them compose themselves, and then thank them for sharing, and they'll give you what it is that you need back. So let's have a look at this. Richard's a great person to learn tarot from. He's a very, very great person to learn tarot from. It seems like you're way down your path. Do you know what I mean on this stuff? So but I guarantee to you, if you've liked what Louis Laval's done, if you liked Odyssey, if you like Jerome Finlay, even if you've just liked what it is that I've done in other areas, imagine combining all that stuff and then thinking outside the box. I sat with the other day, I ran an interview for Reese, something with Reese on Terry Tyson's stuff, and I shared just a couple of bits. I mean, just look at Terry Tyson's reaction to it, and he knows a thing or two about this stuff. And we were talking about the pendulum stuff, and you were blown away by some of the stuff that I was sharing on there. So even the people that are in the know, Reese, Terry Tyson, other people like that, I'm approaching it from the left field. So if you've ever thought to yourself, oh, do you know what, Pete approaches that a little bit differently to most people, this follows that similar pattern, but it's 100% being done my way, and I know I keep saying that. Reader, how would you use lipstick as a prop for an effect? Do you mean the prop for me to demonstrate something, or do you mean as a prop to use in a routine? Because lipstick's really great if you're in a bar and you want to use a routine that uses a napkin. If you can get the non-stick eyeshadow or the non-stick lipstick, it's a beautiful way to impromptu be able to get a peek. So you can have them write something down so they don't have to whisper it to a friend or tell their friend and accidentally have you overhear it. They write it down and then you can see where it is. Or you can use it as a revelation. So one interesting thing, if you're ever in a place that has a mirror, you can have somebody stand, and again, I'm just saying what's coming into my head. You could have somebody stand in front of a mirror and think of something that means something to them and look into their own eyes in that mirror, and then slowly when they've got something, let you know by closing their eyes and keeping them closed. And then you just draw on the mirror in lipstick, and when they open their eyes, there's a revelation right there for them to see. So there's a million ways you could use it. You could use it in a double cross style routine where it goes from one place to another. You could do a PK lipstick style routine where you kiss one person and the lipstick appears on somebody else's cheek at the other side of the room. There's a million things that you could do with lipstick. A million things that just come into my head right now, but certainly I've definitely used it for writing on things, and I've definitely used it in an impromptu situation where I've needed to get a peek, and I've used it for that. So Peter, Stefan, how goes it? How are you feeling in the direction of A24? What's A24?
It's a movie production company.
I don't even know.
Well, you've made some good movies.
I'm going to check them out. So you've just taught me something. I'm 100% going to check them out. It's a good job I've got Pig Cake here. Hey Pete, I got you and Pig Cake's new project, The Turner Effect. Just wanted to say great job as well. Can't wait to see what else you guys are cooking up. You're the legend. The Turner Effect were a really interesting thing. I didn't want to shoot it. Like I really didn't want to shoot it. I said to Pig Cake every time, we were like, are we going to sit down and we're going to do this yet? And I'm like, look, we're a bit busy right now. When like you've got either a sibling or a child that's going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? It were like that. And then I said, right, okay, I'll treat you. You did well today. I'm kidding. But we sat down and it just became a thing, and it was great. It was a really fun thing to shoot. Juan Andres, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. What do you recommend for a propless mentalism? Get the Grail. If you can find a copy of that somewhere, get it. For me, it's got more people on it than I could ever imagine. It's got more books on the subject of propless mentalism than anywhere else I know. It's got more reliable psychomechanical pieces of mentalism than anywhere else. And there's just some really great stuff, from witch hand routines to word revelations to word divinations to star sign divinations to guessing which person's holding what object, to get them to think of an object and tell them what it is, to playing cards and everything else in between. Matt, I'll have a look after here and I'll check to see if I've got your email. So right, I'm going to take 3 more questions, and then we'll get it, and then we'll go. The Pig Cake touch, laugh out loud.
Great.
That's it. Hungru, will you do Fool Us? I bet you can get a trophy and love to see you in action. The show's been going on for so long now. I just don't really think it's if I'm ever going to do any TV stuff, and so I get asked this a lot, and this is a slightly different question, a different answer to a different question. I'm probably gonna just want to do it my way. I'm getting to a point where as soon as TV I get so many offers to do things on TV, and that's not just me saying it. I get offers all the time, and then you sign up to it, and it's always, well, we'd like you to do it this way. We'd like you to look at this. We'd like you to think about this. We'd like you to do this. We'd like you to do that. And as soon as they do that, I go, well, this is no different to what everybody else has done that's come before me. And I don't want to do that. I've got so many great ideas. Like, look, I'll give you one and then I'm going to bounce out. And Joshua, I'll see you soon. I'll talk to you soon. Pig Cake and I were talking about the revelation of a word in a book. And we're like, oh, have you noticed how people get someone to look at the first word on a page, which I don't mind, and then reveal it? the way I'd approach something like that is I have a really interesting game that I play with my friends. Every single time one of my friends is about to answer the phone, I'll try to guess how they're going to answer the phone and what they're going to say, right? So with Pig Cake, it's always something offensive, but it's always different. So I try to guess what he's going to say before he answers. So imagine bumping into people on the street and saying to them, could you think of a comedic friend that you could reach on the phone right now? And they say, yeah. And I say, I'm going to ask you 3 questions about that person before you ring them. So you ask 3 random questions, you write something down and you give it to them. And you say, just ring them up and don't say anything. So they ring their friend, the phone answers, and the person says whatever the first thing is that comes out of their mouth. They then turn the piece of card round and it matches exactly what the person on the other end of the phone said. How the person answered the phone and how the person responded to the phone call, which is really great, you know, like, which is a really good way to do the book test without the need for a book. And I just love the texture of imagining somebody's voice answering that phone. I have 1,000,001 ideas like this. If I were going to do a book test, it'd be a life test. And I'd sit and I'd voyeuristically watch one of those little honor phone boxes where people put books. And I've talked about this in the past. But inside the book, I'd write an inscription like, for the person holding this book, if you've ever wondered if you're exactly where you're meant to be in life, there's a little test. Think of any word in the world. Think of a page number from in this book. There's 228 pages. Turn to that page. If it's the first word on the page, you know you're exactly where you're meant to be. And we just sit and watch from a distance, right? And you just see the person pick up the book, reading it, looking around. They flick through, they see the word, we see a reaction, and I'm never part of that process. There's something more elegantly beautiful about the way that that's shot and the way that that is conducted and composed than just a regular book test. So if I'm going to do TV, I'm not going to be put into the confines of trying to fool somebody. It's going to be because I want to do things my way. And I have 1,000,000 ideas that I don't want to sound egotistical. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm not. Is that I think could change the scope of the way that we think about mentalism, because the plots are fresh. The ideas are brand new. And I've got 10 years of consulting for people more, where I've taken the very best ideas that suit me and I've kept them for myself. So one day, hopefully you'll see that. And if it isn't on television, I promise you I'll just film it all myself. It doesn't matter how raw and rough it is, and I'll just release it to the community. And that's where I'm going to go, you know. I live in Sri Lanka. Just wanted to tell you, you inspired me. I use your effects. You influence people far away in the world. So good luck with everything, and thanks for the service that you do. Kishara, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Listen, I'm going to go because I'm going to have to run now. Sebastian, I wish you were... What do you guess for me? I guess that you're going to do very well on social media in the next few weeks. You're going to have a viral video in the next 2.5 weeks. So, but yeah, we're going to go because we're going to go have Pig Cakes. We're going to have Pig Cakes celebratory meal. We're going to have Pig Cakes celebratory goodbye, or my celebratory goodbye meal. But yeah, so I want to thank you for tuning in, and please keep up to date with my updates. Keep up to date with a new Kickstarter. Keep up to date with what's happening, because like I said, honestly, this one, I feel I'm so excited about it. It's a game changer. So talk to you soon.